Anyway, it's a rough draft.
I suppose, but I don't know. You see, some of this is a golden opportunity.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Third try is the charm. Chapter 10, Turtle Island to Tortoise Isles. Once safely out the gate and under innocuous sail southward, a raucous party on deck ensued. You may wonder, gentle reader, why no one seems to be needed to man the rigging on this bark. Well, about 20 of the normal 50 or so hands were aboard, Yankees and the 3 Acadians and Espy, plus of all of James Smith's mates from the Vesta. Captain Smith himself had at times lent a steady hand in rough weather, and most of the new crew were good crewmen. Not me, nor Kath, nor the 3 Graces, nor the 4 Apostles, which is what we call the missionaries, but Sanger, Speedy, Adam, Abel, and the Aleuts too made good hands. But the Aleuts would not go aloft, they said. And Indian Bob too. All these were capable hands. Oh, I forgot our Manalolo. He counted for 3 hands, plus his feet. However, we consciously avoided storms by making for large ports when we could. We had our story ready. We're just a whaler with ill luck, that's us. A few seasick scientists aboard sea, senor. Our story was ready. Or we hugged sheltered shores or isles. We had no need to hunt whales or to make any kind of schedule. Expect home, as in her telegram, expect home Easter Deo Valente was a mere puff of electronophores over a wire. We were free souls with a ship full of fool's gold. The ship now began to show the women's touch. Beautiful, multicolored laundry hung on lines above the deck, and flowers appeared in the galley from God knew where. We were well offshore. Sounds of song and laughter. Lulu, Lily, and Lala all played, danced, and sang angelically. Lolo also knew every song, and Sanger and I and the Frenchmen, Etienne and Robert, very quickly learned to play along. Kath struggled with whistles and harmonica, but she could sing almost anything in harmony, too. She liked the auto harp, Liliuo Kalani's favorite instrument, which the queen was denied in exile in her own palace. Our 4 preachers also sang very well. I guess churches have their uses. Amazing grace. Lilith daily sang joyous spirituals on deck. She eagerly taught us, "Go down, Moses, follow the drinking gourd, and I shall overcome." We had now 7 females: Lala, Lily, Lulu, Kath, Cascadis, Eve, and Lilith, not counting the animals. Of course, someone wanted to call them the Pleiades, but that was pushing it. They were a brilliant and assorted lot. Kath made them an all-women theater troupe. Shakespeare comedies and Tartuffe were performed. Even Pushkin and Chekhov, early plays. Nobody could remember their lines, and that was all right. A sewing circle took place on deck in good weather. At first, it was Eve's lace-making class, but soon other women focalized crocheting, quilting, knitting, and sailors' macrame, with help from eager, love-starved Yankee whalers. Kath and the Sisters' Council started to post notes all over, such as, "A clean ship means unhappy rats," or "Mind the sarongs in rat lines," or "Your sweetheart back home wants you to eat oranges and garlic." Usually the notes had money pinned to them. We especially loved the colorful Brazilian cruzeiros. Parrots, palms, green mountains, bearded faces like ours were on this money. Now money had become our chief joke, as she had intended all along. After ceremonially issuing gold and silver coins to everyone, the 3 Graces passed them out dancing on silver trays. She laughingly presented a huge bin filled with paper notes of 20 different countries of all denominations, mostly small. She threw out handfuls of mixed crumbled bills until we all got into the act as if it Mardi Gras and stuffed our pockets with this newly funny money. We played tiddlywinks with gold coins on Lulu's bare torso. Tickled, she kept laughing and knocking the coins off, so we argued over who had won. We made paper airplanes. But a penalty was charged. A penalty was charged if any notes or, gasp, gold $100 coins went overboard. Usually the offender had to sing a funny song or stand on his, her, or her head, or both, for incorrigible repeat offenders. Several people made clothing out of the bills. Lily made a dress designed to rip itself to shreds in any wind. We showered her with doubloons. We played poker with bills whose value we knew nothing about. Then after the game, we looked up the money on our lists, thank you C.H.L. Hall Company, and found out once that the biggest loser had only 2 notes left. A Japanese one worth $200 and a Chinese one worth $80. Made him the big winner. He traded the bills for 2 kisses from Lulu. We also had a whisker contest. Prizes were given for length, Captain Smith won, strongest aroma, and best patterns of shaving. Also a pipe contest. Claghorn's meerschaum won the contest. It was carved into the likeness of a sailor with a lantern standing at the bow of a ship. The 3 Graces grew more lovely every day, and all 3 had bows now. Guess who? Tall Lala had fallen to Cupid. The handsome, shy Bob Sanger had found in her a laughing companion. He struggled and sobbed over a letter to Suzanne in Roanoke, which remained unmailed. But he was fairly hooked, and she too. Lolo and Lulu were fast glued up since the biting. They were well matched. He was rather slight for a Hawaiian, but not for a shark. And she too, a pink pearl. Lily lingered long. She had a crush on Silent Abel, but in San Francisco he met his lost love, Lilith. He'd never responded to Lily, except with his very polite formality, his normal reserved manner. Lily and Lilith became friends. Negro gospel songs were their common love. Abel sang tenor. But another suitor appeared for Lily. Long having watched her, our Speedy stepped up and charmed her with tales of horses, sailors, and horsemen's knots, and macrame, promises of dream castles and green fields, perhaps. But Speedy was a serious and gifted man who wanted a family. His former house and family had seen Sherman's bummers. Who had burned everything. He had not courted before. Oh, war, war, war. The 3 Vahinis one day played a game with Lolo and endless long pieces of shelf paper and pens. The game was to see who was most closely related to their favorite princess of Hawaii, Liliuokalani, who was later to be a perfect and perfectly tragic queen of a real group. After hours and hours of this game, Lala won. The 3 were from 3 different families on the Big Island. Manololo's ali'i on Maui, although illustrious, were of a lesser line. No, no, cried Lolo, me biggest ali'i. But the ladies smothered him with pillows and went on. Lala was 4th cousin to Liliuokalani, once removed by mother's line. Lily was 7th cousin, but had a name closer to her highnesses. And Lulu, 5th cousin on her father's side, but from a 3rd son, and 8th on her mother's side, once removed, I think. Lala won, so she got to be pregnant first. Yes, that was the contest. They decided to only have one baby, one pregnancy, that is, at a time. They might be on Vesta for years. They loved us. We loved them. We made our last 3 pickups in San Francisco. About an hour before we left on high tide, the mates were about to stow away the gangplank when here come trotting 2 large shaggy dogs, tongues out. Without hesitation, they jumped aboard via the plank and proceeded to rapidly sniff the whole deck. They were large, light brown and cream colored, clotted and mottled, and scary looking. No one came near but one mate, who was growled at by both dogs. These 2, male and female, obviously siblings, acted as if they belonged there and were being very loyal to, what, the ship? But nobody had better mess with them. They absolutely would not leave, not even for steaks, on the gangplank. When I came on deck, they rushed to me, as if I were or I knew their master. After a few deep sniffs of me all over, they gave up on that. I had an eerie hallucination that these dogs had belonged, as free-loving souls, belonged to my lost dog man, the poet. But Philadelphia and Gettysburg are far from California. I had burnt all my clothes, and the poem, too. We called them interchangeably the peace dogs, freedom and liberty. They were inseparable, sometimes literally inseparable, at least once a year. I brought Sphinx aboard. I found her calmly sitting on a coil of warm rope on a tar barrel, purring. She was all black, except she had at any one time between 1 and 6 white hairs on her breast. I used to forecast the weather from those hairs, to no success. She fulfilled the cat role of calm hauteur and warmed my feet. If she had been human, she would have smoked Du Mauriers like my stylish Aunt Issy. Sphinx warmed Kathy's feet, too. She was called Cat, too. She and Sphinx loved deeply, like me and Sphinx. Happily we sailed. Money fell in the ocean. We made fireworks out of rifle cartridge powder that shot sparkly ruble notes into the air. No penalties assessed. No pirates appeared. Our one visit from a U.S. warship was routine, though nervous. I can't recall the vessel's name. It was off San Diego. We called her the Vampire. We put on sailor's clothes. Lolo needed help. He laughed too much and looked appropriately foolish as Captain James Smith produced gold-sealed papers for the Admiral. As he and his mate turned their backs on us, we all saluted each other vigorously with various fingers. Fortunately, they were alone on our deck, and he wasn't an admiral, and Smith didn't laugh. We filled all our water casks near San Diego. We wanted no more American company for now. We headed for the Galapagos, still evolving our commune. Already we were learning not to tell one another what to do, except we often didn't know how to do jobs without a boss. For the New England sailors, with lifetimes of sailing under orders, it was especially hard. But then, to see a Maine man burst the bonds of rigid frugality, taciturnity, and self-reliance, and work with others, braiding flower garlands into ropes, or colorfully painting whaleboats with garish paisleys and tartans, that was like seeing Jesus telling jokes. And the work shanties were ever more lusty, and the sails continued to be set trimly. At this point, I'm going to sing one of the chanties that we sang on that ship. It's a damn tough life, full of toil and strife, we whalermen undergo, and we won't give a damn when the day gales are done, how hard the winds did blow. For we're homeward bound from the Arctic rounds with a good ship taut and free, and we won't give a damn when we drink our rum with the girls from old Maui. Rolling down to old Maui, me boys, rolling down to old Maui. We're homeward bound from the Arctic round, rolling down to old Maui. I'll spare you all my ukulele accompaniment. As the islands, the Galapagos, as they hove into sight, we were well prepared with all our notebooks, our spyglasses, and hiking gear. We had collection bags too, although we wanted to study, not kill. We made a quick visit to the Ecuadorian police post, or whatever they called it, where they made sure that the penguins weren't robbing the Republic's treasury. It seemed like it maybe got more visits and was better run than the Russian post at Sitka, but not much. There were no guns to tend, and it smelled of wine rather than vodka. No church incense smell at all. We puzzled long over why we all felt drawn to the Galapagos. Kathy and I, the bee drone duopoly, wanted to see the animals. Many, especially the vahinis and Aleuts, wanted some silence, some nature, their familiar sea without all of us chattering white people for a while. We felt this from them. Sanger, Smith, Adam, and I had heard of Darwin and his researches on the beagle in 1831, and we wanted to follow up on his findings after 35 years, and especially in view of our newfound knowledge of animals and our newfound freedom to act upon it. We were not bound by any rules whatsoever of scientific so-called objectivity. Really, just human chauvinism by another name. To a penguin, a white-coated scientist who is calmly watching you starve is not being objective at all. Not at all. We plan to ask the animals how we should study them and what they wish to tell or show to us ignorant, two-legged cousins of theirs. We hope to rely on Click and Yak and the four Polynesians of amazing sensitivity for our connections to these animals. I kept thinking, doomed, all doomed. All these critters are doomed to be eaten by hungry sailors. But in this case, I was a little premature. We split up into 4 teams to study different creatures on different islands. I think there were 8 isles, but only Fernandina, the biggest, sticks in my mind by name. We moored the ship just offshore there, well away from the Ecuadorian station. From there, with great and mounting excitement, we sent out parties in whaleboats to different islands. Click and Yak seemed to have the strongest psychic line to the animals. It was probably their culture of hunting to live. Each animal and human person was in a vast web for them. Even these far, strange animals, they said, could be seen in a web in their dreams. They had a helper, a very precious supply of dried mushrooms. I identified them from the Smith's library aboard Vesta. I identified them as Amanita muscaria, very carefully dried and boiled, they said, in seal milk, and then re-dried. They said they had learned of the mushroom and its uses from far-ranging shamans of their Asian Siberian cousins. And those cousins said they learned from the Ainu, bearded, pale white men of Japan, who themselves had learned from the bears. The Aleut people, after drinking the third-hand urine of shamans to feel the mushroom's might, finally found the mushroom itself in the Canadian interior, near spruce and especially birch trees. They treasured it, as I believe our European ancestors also did, and used it to talk to spirits in their dreams. We wished to study the iguanas, the penguins, the tortoises, birds, and anybody else we could find. First, Kath and I tracked a big tribe of Fernandina tortoises. 17 of them sort of stuck near each other as they munched spiny but juicy cactus. We took Freedom and Liberty, our 2 dogs, and Sphinx, our cat, along with us for extra, shall we say, animal magnetism. I guess that's a pun. The peace dogs ranged free, scouting the 17 stolid hillocks with enormous sniffs. Then, kneeling at our feet, panting, as if to say, "Yeah, Chief," These things seem okay, but we don't know. So, can we go now? We let them go then to chase lizards into rock piles. Sphinx, we had carried in a light wicker contraption that I'd made, where she could lie curled up around my neck, or Cat's when she wore the basket. Sphinx jumped down, stretched, bounded atop the biggest tortoise, and busily washed her face. So we knew which tortoise to follow. The leader, said Sphinx. Well, it was slow work. We stayed all day in the hot sun, sitting on tortoises, or following the group slowly as they grazed and shat. We were receptive, but heard no message. Next day we persisted, humbly, patiently. Just as my sunburn was beginning to hurt, up came Click and Yak, all be-mushroomed. The yellow, heavy-lidded eyes, the synchronized motions on land. They did a dance and a song, weaving among the turtles, which slowly were all coming together. The two dancers strewed handfuls of some leaves, fresh, local, and pieces of cactus. They were not scratched by the many spines, like the tortoises. Later, the Aleuts said it was all made up, all improvised. They said, we were like babies. The turtle god helped us, sang to us. Oh, oh, oh. Thanks to them, we got a plan. The tortoises told them they liked us. They would help us. They felt sorry for us. No one of us was more than 70 years old. They were twice that. Some were, others only 50 or so. We needed elders, they said, even if we couldn't understand them. Poor hatchlings we were. So the oldest, biggest one would come aboard. We carried him near, but he walked aboard proudly. He was not a captive. He also wanted to taste something other than cactus and the local leather leaf plants, even if it killed him. He, through Click and Yak, said we should go to 3 other islands, do the same thing, and take aboard the largest elder who was willing to go. Most turtles proved eager in their slow way when we learned to read their signals. We asked, which 3 islands? They replied, any 3 we chose. There were seven different tribes of turtles on 7 islands. They planned to not only counsel us, but talk as never before on a 4-way party line to all their tortoise relatives. Each elder, of course, could talk, quote unquote, talk easily to their own people on his or her own island through telepathy. Of course, we ended up with 2 females, 2 males, crones and old bachelors. They planned, said K and Y, to show us many things slowly as we sail, very, very slowly, and to eat new stuff. The 4 Hawaiians, a.k.a. went off joyfully together in a whaleboat to get acquainted with penguins. There weren't as many as Darwin had reported. They were still so odd as to seem impossible. On the equator, on dry desert islands, a bird of the far south, of ice and snow, and wet lands. No other penguins were north of the 45-degree south parallel, I think. Lolo, Lulu, Lala, and Lili exulted in putting their kinship group to a work so infused with spirit, with Aloha. They too could talk in a way to animals and get responses. As a child, the Dr. Dolittle stories were my favorite bedtime reading. But I'd learned by then that animals would not speak in English or in words, of course. As any good naturalist knows, it is a matter of watching the creature closely and feeling as much as possible as the animal feels. Human language, spoken or heard, can break the spell. Many hunters do not use it. But those 4, and the Aleuts in their way, had some sensitivity that I had lost, dreamy, glegged farm boy though I was. By the way, glegged, adjective, describes one who looks askance, as at work or responsibilities or normal reality. They rested near a large flock. The four Hawaiians rested near a large flock of the small penguins. All four humans stripped naked and sang an old song of the sea, then dived in and began to imitate the penguins, catching fish, sliding down the wet rocks, splashing and clamoring. The four became for a while beings, feeling all that the penguins felt, even mating urges. Finally, the team withdrew and compared notes. All agreed on the approximate message this curious small tribe had communicated. We are a small tribe. We come from so far away and so long ago that we have forgotten all our relatives. Now you two-legged big people, they were also two-legged, of course. Now you two-legged big people have begun to eat us. We do not know what will become of us. We thought we were safe. Let us alone. The fish are very good here. This is all we know. This fragile tribe of simple creatures rather saddened our Hawaiians. The four moved on to a tribe of seals. They seemed to resemble the monk seals of their home islands, which, although rather scarce and disliked by fishermen, were well known to the kahunas in their spirit power. Lolo wisely decided to hang back and watch. A group of female seals were sunning themselves. None of the huge males was around. The three graces lolled nude on top of, between, and even under the seals, stroking and singing to them. Our three sirens lulled them until all were one warm, furry mass of basking blubber. The girls talked and listened, without words, of course. The seals were saying, all your kind seem to want is to be orcas and eat us. Yet you three are so different. Our mothers say, once upon a time we did not fear you. We can show you where the richest kelp and fish are, and can introduce you to the seaweed two-leggeds. But this informational idyll was broken by the emergence with a roar of a huge male seal seeking to dominate his harem, with barks and three human screams. The whole bunch of females, tumbling over and over one another, fled seaward. The male's thoughts were too lusty for a chat. A fleeing female beamed at us. Our males are always so stupid. Goodbye now, friends. Please do not eat our young and us. Those seals, they could not conceive that their young were taken for fur, not meat. Lily was pretty badly nipped by the male on her shoulder. It left a scar, which later she grew to consider a mark of her seal spirit guide. The Hawaiians returned to Vesta. By the way, our ship, the Vesta, was well named for our adventure. As my manic Latin teacher, Booby Hatch, taught me, Vesta was one of the 12 Roman gods and goddesses. She ruled the hearth and the home. She didn't get as much press coverage as the other deities, but more clothing coverage. The others were always out making war or babies. She kept the home fire burning eternally with the help of 6 virgin priestesses, the Vestal Virgins. The Smith brothers, unlike the Hulls, saw fit to waste hard-earned money on a figurehead for the ships. Vesta's figurehead was a carved wooden maiden, painted ivory white, with gilt hair streaming, holding forth a streaming golden torch. Always at home by the fire. Brilliant, of course, featured a similar woman holding a huge gilt diamond, brilliant cut. These were ironic symbols, I felt, for whalers with stinking tri-fires and ambergris for diamonds. One more team went out. Adam, as artist, Sanger, Smith, and Speedy, and Indian Bob went out to study the unique marine iguanas. Unlike all other iguanas, this species is vegetarian and aquatic, feeding underwater on algae exclusively. Having made contact with tortoises, Kath and I expected a clear report from our team on the lizard's life stream, as we called our telepathic insights. But their report was a rather strange one. They had discussed Darwin's rather crude experiment from his journal, which we had read. In 1832, he had decided to find out if iguanas could possibly be as stupid as they appeared to a scientist. Finding a group of the crenellated black beasts on a low bluff, he selected an identifiable individual and picked him up and heaved him into the water, all 40 pounds of him. The iguana very quickly scrambled up and out of the water and back to the same exact spot. Darwin hurled him again. Again, the reptile returned to the same spot. Again, Darwin threw it. The iguana returned. Darwin concluded the iguana couldn't learn. I conclude that critter wasn't about to give up his favorite spot in the sun. It was his spot, and no ugly, nosy, white two-leggers would persuade him otherwise. They were the stupid ones. So Sanger, Smith, and Company decided to go one better. They selected one poor lizard as a victim, apologizing in advance to the lucky subject. Then, as Smith hurled the iguana into the sea, Indian Bob jumped in after, and Adam hurled Speedy in two by his legs. They wanted to experience what the creature did, to show him that they were with him, or some such, and try to read his responses. The beast and the two men quickly hauled themselves out and returned to the same spot. All three were hurled or dove in again, and again. Indian Bob said he had more sensitivity than the rest of us on that day. Indian Bob said, I think Iggy here noticed finally that we were copying him. He thinks we are really stupid. He says, go find your own algae and place to sunbathe. Well, either iguanas had no interest in us, though they might be doomed, or we had finally really pissed them off. Maybe they aren't tasty enough to be doomed. Anyway, back aboard the ship, notes were compared. All of us felt a thrill that our whole race, represented by us, was actually communicating with our long-lost relatives. Sphinx did not seem impressed. The birds remained to be studied. Darwin had his finches, of course, but also there were very many other birds found nowhere else. We all wanted to try talking with these noble songsters. In this pristine place, where the sounds of steam engines, guns, and human chatter had not yet drowned out the sounds of simple birds talking their songs. Our fourth team, Abel and Lilith, had gone out on their own on Fernandina. They did not talk, but they walked hand in hand, singing and throwing seeds toward any birds they encountered. To their wonder, soon 4 or 5 birds were following them and tamely eating the seeds, not from a hand, however. They returned and requested company. Abel and Lilith, the 4 Hawaiians, and Eve, and the 2 Aleuts on mushrooms went out in a group to hold hands in a circle on a small knoll. The rest of us watched silently, 1/4 mile away. We heard a chant or song coming from the far brown circle. It sounded neither Aleut nor Hawaiian. Later they all said, it simply came to them naturally. I can sing it yet, but I won't try to describe it. Slowly, a circle of birds formed, slowly flying above the singing circle. The song stopped, and the birds landed on the knoll and all among the singers. For a minute, all was an eerie, motionless, silent tableau. Then the birds took flight. Our friends seemed to wake up and return to us, as awed as small children. They said the birds had very clearly heard us and heard about our venture. They knew, because all birds know, of all that was seen from the air by birds everywhere. And we were the ones that were closest to understanding the danger all the winged ones felt in us. They promised to send 2 of every kind of bird which chose to take part in our voyage. Many kinds felt they were already too endangered by small numbers to send birds with us. These 15 or 20 birds, we never counted them, in mated pairs, would roost on our ship if we would provide seeds to eat. And all the types coming with us were seed eaters. There were no insect eaters. However, all chicks needed insects and larvae for protein. We promised to catch them for the little peepers. These birds and their chicks and their songs and bright colors were always there to cheer us thereafter. The oft-repeated songs acquired for us ever more meanings as we learned to simply pay attention to the bird songs, a channel of communication which all country folk have in the world, but which almost everyone considers simply pretty black background blather. But birds have spoken to us for thousands, perhaps millions of years, to deaf ears lately. To Roman soothsayers and Yaqui shamans, the flight and cries of birds always carried meaning. Thus we rounded out our studies on these Galapagos or Tortoise Islands. We acquired a dozen or 2 songbirds, 4 huge tortoises, and a pod of dolphins who had adopted us and seemed inclined to show us the way, all the way to Cape Horn. End of chapter 10.